How's your day going, man?
It's been a little bit of a headache, to be honest, trying to keep up with all the information that's being thrown out there on the internet today.
Oh, yeah. The last 24 hours have been insane.
Yeah. It was a long night, too.
But, hey, we're back. We've been gone for a little bit. Who would have thought that working 60, 70 hours a week across 2 jobs can get you sick, especially when you're only getting like 3-4 hours of sleep.
Yeah, no, it's news to me for sure. So
yes.
Thank you for being the guinea pig for that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's not like you weren't sick too, right? So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's just been a rough couple months trying to be consistent.
Yeah. But we're here, and we're here right after a wild event. We had the first ever presidential debate that happened early, before either nominee were codified by their own parties. So that's like a historic thing, right? That's like never before happened.
And if I had to wager based on how it went, it may never happen again.
Oh.
This might be the one of one.
I think that's actually for the best. Because
I was gonna say I hope it's a one of one. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, because last night was a disaster, and we're gonna jump right into it. But for any new listeners, I'm Skill. This is, as I call him, the Great Hoomdini. We're doing a social experiment. Essentially, we started this podcast because we believe that a lot of the things, political opinions, cultural paradigms, a lot of these things have kind of been encapsulated in a digital age. A lot of things get, convoluted, or a lot of things are lost in translation. We've got misinformation online that's rampant. We've got a 24-hour news cycle. We're noticing that it's harder and harder for people to connect. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that? Or does that kind of sum it up?
I just think the landscape of political media and discourse is layers of obfuscation for the sake of entertainment rather than education, and we aim to fix that. True.
And one of the things that makes our setup unique is we don't tell the audience what our political alignments are. We agree on some things, but definitely not everything. But it shouldn't matter, because what we're ultimately pushing for is progress. We both believe that rampant bipartisanship is insanity, and it's not getting us anywhere collectively as a country, and it sets a dangerous precedent for other countries as well. Would you agree?
I mean, look at what it gave us last night.
Perfect transition.
The train hit the station last night, and I'll be honest, I'm not going to use doomerism sentiments because I don't necessarily believe in them, but if you're an American, especially a voting age American, and you watched that hour and a half last night and all of the discourse and all the fallout from it this morning and this afternoon, you can't see the current paradigm and not see that it's broken inherently. It has to end. This has to be the last moment of this.
True. So I guess we should just pedal to the metal. Last night we had that debate, Biden versus Trump. Our RFK didn't take the stage, which he was super salty about, very ass mad. But what were your thoughts watching Biden and Trump walk out on the stage before we get into the actual meat and potatoes of it?
I don't know if it's me doing confirmation bias, but even from the moment that they walked on stage, I felt like this sensation creeping up my spine that I was about to watch my worst fears realized. I just felt like I was about to get the worst of both of them, and I don't think that fully came to fruition. I don't think that I got as bad of a reaction from Trump as I was anticipating, but I definitely saw the worst case scenario for the Democratic nominee, the incumbent president.
Yeah, he sounded. I thought he looked weak, and he sounded like he was just tired and out of I don't know if he was out of breath or just low energy or what.
Yeah, I mean, for the majority of the hour and a half, his standby look was almost as bad as when he actually tried to speak. Yeah. He was mouth agape half the time, and he looked lost. He looked confused.
Yeah.
Somebody used the term, that he's propped up like a scarecrow, and then I started to think that might be more indicative of his entire presidency and candidacy than I cared to acknowledge earlier.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what I felt like I was watching. I felt like I was watching a guy stuck and stuffed up on a stage that didn't belong there, and the result is what we have so far.
It's weird. I actually thought that maybe people in the audience that didn't get a chance to see it or don't know the rules. There was a unique set of rules that went with this debate, right? Like, there was no audience. They couldn't have their teams help them in intermission. There was no earpieces or anything like that. They were only addressed by the moderator, and when they weren't talking, their microphones were muted. I thought that would actually go to Biden's strength, but it ended up not going that way at all. Like, why do you think that was?
I think it's a multitude of factors, but I think the biggest one is that I actually think, now I don't want this to get misconstrued, so I'll clarify down the road, but I think Trump had an actual game plan. It seemed like Biden had absolutely nothing pre-planned at all, which, is becoming a little bit too par for the course for the DNC. But Trump seemed like he went in there with the intention of, and you can corroborate this with sentiments that were being expressed leading up to the debate on Fox News and other right-wing media outlets. The entire point was for him to seem composed, lucid, and not doing ad hominem or personal attacks, which, leaked out a couple of times. But his overall demeanor was much more reserved than what we're used to seeing from Donald Trump. And I think he actually had a game plan and followed and executed that game plan. I saw nothing of the sort from his opponent.
Yeah, and I feel Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think, the reason that they did a lot of people thought that the muting while speaking, muting the opponent while speaking would favor Biden is because we assumed that Trump would be launching these ad hominem attacks and these pedantic insults from across the way if they didn't. But he looked completely calm. He looked like other than the content of what he was speaking, in terms of his actual mannerisms, he seemed somewhat like a normal presidential candidate for half the debate.
Yeah, and it felt like the ad hominem actually came from Biden more often.
Yeah, at one point I was watching both of my top two and frankly only two presidential candidates screaming about who had a better handicap for golf.
Yeah, and then yeah, that's a lie. He didn't. Oh,
it was just 90 minutes of that. It was 90 minutes of you're lying, no, he's lying, no, everything you said is a lie, no, everything he said is a lie. And at one point, going back to the golf comment, if you ever find yourself in a position where Donald Trump is saying to you, let's not act like children and move on,
yeah,
you've lost. The night was lost from that moment on.
At least optically, yeah.
But that's half the battle, right? I understand, and if we're gonna, through the course of this discussion, I'm sure we're going to ration out the rest of it and explain why the substance of what was being said is not necessarily as damning as people think. But optics are, I would say, even more than half the battle. Populism and optics are 80% of, especially re-election, let alone election in the first place. So the fact that both of these guys are fighting for re-election, and one looked optically lost, he looked dementia-ridden, he looked like he had Alzheimer's, whatever you want to call it. And I understand there's going to be people that say and remind me that, he has a stutter, it's an actual condition. This was way beyond that. And I've seen Biden look way stronger even within the last couple of weeks or months than he did tonight. And this was the one night, the first debate especially, where it was just those two. That's where you have to come out swinging and looking your best. And he looked his absolute worst.
For Christ's sake, did you see his speech today?
Yeah, he sounded lucid.
Yeah, he looked like a different person.
Yeah, no, they
he got the firmware update.
Adrenochrome.
Yeah, yeah. I will say this: the truth was on Biden's side, just objectively, but he fails the vibe checks, man. And what is it, like 70% of voters tend to vote based on feelings, like how it made them feel, or how a presidential candidate makes them feel, which is dangerous enough already. But yeah, it was just Biden lost. Democrats need to stop coping about it, because I will get into it later. But the post media kind of junket was insane. We had Gavin Newsom, Warnock, and Jasmine Crockett all trying to salvage that night, and it was just impossible.
Was it just me, or did Gavin Newsom specifically kind of sound like he was gamifying the system of being the front runner for his replacement, though?
Yeah, a lot of
Because
people have been wanting that.
yeah, in all honesty, it looked to me like he was calculating the exact things to say, or better yet, mechanisms outside of just him specifically were sitting there calculating, no, I need to show support, I need to show party favor and party alliance, and I need to have a call to action, I need to have a unifying message. If he just goes up there and trashes the incumbent president that's also in his party from the largest Democratic state in the country, that's a terrible optic. I honestly think if you're going to suspect anything, I would suspect Newsom is already inching his way into that position.
Well, it's been long rumored that he would be like the next Democratic candidate to run. But
yeah, and I think he did a lot to kind of be opportunistic. I don't know that they expected it to go as poorly as they did, although I have a sneaking suspicion that they expected it to go poorly.
Yeah. So I'll let you take lead on this. We kind of front loaded it with having low expectations. How did you feel as it started? Because I think they opened with them talking about the economy, right? Talking about how under Biden's watch, people still feel like the economy is trash. Biden and Trump had a back and forth. Like, what were your thoughts on just kind of like the talking points? Like, what were takeaways for you? Like, just kind of share your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, the sad thing is, and it kind of ties into what we were talking about optics, when it comes to Trump's rhetoric and when he talks about, his hyperbolic form of political speech, the disappointing part is he can say literally whatever the hell he wants, and his constituency is going to bat for him 100%. So he went up there, especially within this topic and really every other topic, everything that Biden came forward with, which was, I created X amount of jobs, I inherited X economy, I tried to turn the ship around, I was given some horrible situation, and then Donald Trump would just do what he normally does and say, I'm the greatest person in history, I was the greatest president in history, I had the greatest economy in history, Joe is the worst thing in history. I mean, it's so exhausting that in a debate in which Trump said things that were so overtly false, the only thing that we can talk about is Joe Biden and how bad he was. This should have been a slam dunk for Joe. All he needed to do was stay principled, mention statistics and information, and he had it in the bag, in my opinion. Granted, the people who were going to vote for Trump already going into tonight, they weren't going to be swayed one way or another. But we're talking about the people that are undecided. In terms of the economy, in previous episodes, we've already kind of, during the State of the Union especially, we kind of picked apart or pulled back some of the figures behind Joe's job creation. I think he's also padding his stats a little bit by being the president that inherited the recovery from a pandemic period. That being said, legislatively, he has done some things that I view as a positive, but I don't think they're as positive as he would want you to believe that they are. And then going to the other side, it's really hard to sometimes it's hard to analyze the things that Trump says because they're just so overtly hyperbolic and misleading, and it's just so on brand, I don't even know where I can actually find a crease to start talking about it.
Yeah, I think when you're analyzing the economy and how we talk about it, when I hear stuff like Biden talk about he fixed the economy or the trajectory of the economy, he's not technically wrong, right? But then you have to, a lot of people don't know this, but we have macro and microeconomics. So what most people feel are like the details, the devil's in the details. So our everyday lives are not necessarily what they're talking about. So I think I read something about the three metrics that most of the economists have been measuring, like the average person's everyday life, was it real wages, which is what they adjust for inflation, and basically that's how far your dollar goes. We had the average house price, and then we had the average vehicle price, both new and used, and they kind of create like this baseline using these metrics versus something that's like on a larger scale. You've got like the industrial production index, you've got like the consumer price and producer index, you've got like the rubber band effect, GDP growth, yada yada yada. So it's a nuanced issue. I agree with you that it's kind of difficult to map because it takes research. I do want to point out that Trump ran the gambit on talking points and misinformation to the point where you and I just aren't going to have time to go through and peel away numbers. So we're just going to post the fact-checking stuff in the description so people can read it for themselves. But,
yeah, I mean, it was literally 90 minutes of consecutive lying and misinformation. That's what's so shocking to me, is that's what his debate was, and somehow it still feels like he won. But yeah, in terms of the economy, this is a broader scale issue, both that I have with economics as a form of study and how it's presented to the general public in terms of politics. It's something that has layers of complexity, but as you said, there are really only certain specific things and metrics that the average person, especially the voters, care about. And they always maintain this overly broad and overly general view of economics and economic growth and health for presidents. And I feel like they were trying to softball Biden into a position where he could look like a hero for this country. He could look like, they started saying things like he's created more jobs than any president in history. Well, that's like bathing in half-truths,
Right. Absolutely right.
And anyone that has any sort of, consistency of tracking these numbers and tracking these statements knows that. But the problem is that they're hoping that most of the people watching, or at least most of the people that are undecided on the voter, and when it comes to voting, aren't actually doing this deep dive. But if you look at it for 10 seconds, you'll start to see that, again, it's just half-truths. He looks great, but there's context that matters, and they're intentionally leaving that context out.
No, I absolutely agree.
But yeah, and then you have the other guy who just didn't even try.
We've been talking a lot about Biden. I know you said you agreed with me. Trump just ran the gambit, but was there anything that stuck out to you that was particularly he was just unabashed about, or anything that was just over the top in terms of what he was lying about?
You mean in terms of the whole debate, or just the economic side of it?
I mean either one. Because we're kind of winging it this episode, since we're getting back on our feet and we're covering this.
Yeah.
And there's so much going on.
I mean, for me, the biggest thing, and I don't know why it never really clicked for me before, but the biggest thing that bothers me about Donald Trump is his communication about how he is simultaneously, well, I think the most obvious lie, in my opinion, from the whole night, if we're encapsulating the whole night, is the fact that he at one point said that everyone in the country is now in agreement that Roe v. Wade being overturned was a good thing and was the right choice.
Oh yeah.
The fact that he was like, oh no, everyone agrees now, because you're killing babies and you're doing, it's just this ridiculous lie, and that's not hyperbole. He gets such a credit, or he gets so much defense by his voters saying that it's just hyperbolic speech. Dude, you can't say things like Roe v. Wade is a great decision that everyone across the country is now unanimous on. It's just so far from the truth. It's one of the most divisive issues currently going on, and it's one of the most divisive decisions the Supreme Court has made in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
So I don't understand how he could. I mean, he didn't quote unquote get away with saying it because Biden addressed it, but he addressed it so poorly. And the fact that he would say so, I mean, dude, the number of rape pregnancies and rape births in Texas alone has skyrocketed to obscene numbers. I mean, the last time you and I talked about it, this was 2 months ago, it was upwards of over thousands and thousands of births and pregnancies related to rape just in the state of Texas since Roe v. Wade was overturned.
I was just going to bring that up. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, there's no way, I forget what the specific number was, but there's no way that you can have information like that and then lie to my face and tell me that the country is unanimous on this.
Texas had over 26,000 rape-related pregnancies in the 16 months in the 16 months immediately after the abortion ban. And this is a well-recognized study.
Right.
This is from the American Medical Association. So we're not just making this up.
Yeah, and from a state in which during the whole time that they were voting to ban abortions, they were telling women over and over again, we'll round up every rapist in the street and we'll put them behind bars, or we'll put them underneath the jail, or whatever the fuck they said.
Yep.
Well, clearly, you're missing quite a few of them. You've missed at least 26,000 of them. So maybe do a better job. But don't sit here and tell me that this hasn't had a negative ramification on the country. It's probably the core thing that the country as a whole is the most divided on right now. And he just blatantly said the opposite was the case. And no one put an actual worthy challenge against it.
Yeah, I'd also want to point out that it's super rare. Something that Donald Trump said is like, you guys are doing late-term abortions. Like, no one's doing that. Like, these 9-month or 8-month abortions, like, that's not happening unless it's like an extreme emergency. And that's supposed to be like, from what I've read, it's like a multiple day, like 3 or 4 days it takes for them to induce the labor, terminate the pregnancy, take care of the mother. There's a lot that goes into it. No one's just saying like, hey, I'm pregnant. I've had this thing in me and I've bonded with it and I have chemicals and all these things. And now 9 months later, I've decided I want it. So let's yeet his fetus. Like, that's not happening. That's called murder. Unless there's like a medical exception. You don't get to have like a 9-month pregnancy and then just terminate it.
Yeah, he was basically saying that we're now proponents of infanticide, or that's what was happening.
Yeah.
In tons of states. And then he kept bringing it back to, what was it, one guy from Virginia? I think it was somebody from Virginia that gave some sort of first account of the fact that this was happening, and that's been debunked since. I mean, it was known to be a lie from the beginning. So the fact that we're just gonna toss around these blatant lies about abortion, like it's just, we were just having abortion like lollipops. We just enjoyed the process. No one's ever enjoyed that process. In fact, of anyone, of the 3, but mostly 2 people that talked about it, I actually went and watched RFK's response, and he had a much more rationed response than either of these 2 when it came to abortion. And it's just insane that I even have to say those words.
Yeah, and even then, like, even how like the medical field and like how other people define what a late-term abortion is varies. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's just it's so cringe. It's so cringe when I hear people talk about it.
Yeah, I think that was probably, at least for me, that was the most egregiously obvious lie. But again, it's kind of hard to isolate one because it was just 90 minutes of misinformation. It was just insane. I at times it was like the Trump effect was happening on me, where I became so, halfway through I was desensitized almost to how much he was lying. And I knew that he wasn't going to actually tell any truth through the rest of it. So I just committed my brain to assuming that he was going to lie about everything. And he did, 100%.
You're like, I'm strapping in. That's funny.
Yeah. It was like watching a WWE match. I was just waiting to see when he was going to bring out the chair. And several times it felt like, at least rhetorically, he did.
The whole thing was just wild. The main 3 things, which is pretty much what I'm asking you, that affect voters: economy, abortion, and right now, immigration. They had like a whole back and forth about immigration. I think Trump fucking bodied Biden. And I think, actually, believe it or not, this is where I'm going to give it to Trump. He did make some solid points about immigration. I was surprised that. I was actually genuinely surprised he even brought it up. It was weird to see Biden, especially when he was asked about the economy and like the black community multiple times. Like, he deferred to immigration, and then they did like that back and forth you game. But when Trump said one of the reasons why there's disproportionate like wage gaps in the black community is they don't have job opportunities because you're letting illegal immigrants in here, funneling them into these cities, and they're taking black people's jobs. I was like, holy shit, that's like based, because that's true. It's like, but what were your thoughts on the immigration conversation?
The immigration conversation was definitely in Trump's favor, although, if I'm being honest, this is kind of one of those things that requires context. Anybody who was the incumbent in this situation was probably going to have a similar, like, Joe walked in on the back foot because the issue is so pervasive that there's nothing that he could have come out and said that would have totally exonerated him from the issue. Trump went on the aggressive with talking about the different minority representations and the fact that immigration was undermining those communities. But he did, I mean, there was some little things rhetorically that I couldn't help but perk my ears up at, like when he specified that black jobs were being taken away. I just couldn't help but ask myself, well, what specifically are you referring to? Are you just referring to all jobs for black people, or are you referring to specific types of jobs? But that distinction wasn't really important.
Well, I think we both know he means labor jobs.
Yeah, no, I know. It was just one of those things where it was just, I mean, I'm not saying that washed away the rest of it, because I actually agree with you that I thought it was surprising and effective that he went for that. And I think that was probably, I would say, the only time during the entirety of the 90 minutes that Trump was on the offensive and not just being blatantly dishonest the entire time. I mean, he was, but
yeah, he was still disingenuous, but he like, a broken clock can be right twice a day kind of thing.
Exactly. That's the best phrase I could have come up with. So thank you for filling that. But definitely, it felt like this was the thing that was going to be the best gotcha against Joe, and Joe had literally nothing to say against it. Yeah. I mean, he could have mentioned the fact that he was trying to put together these border bills and they were being shot down by Republicans left and right. He could have mentioned the reports that came out that, you know, there was a prevailing theory that Donald Trump trying to win re-election was a significant motivator for Republicans denying these border bills and these improvements to the border crisis. But no, again, he came out swinging and missing on everything. Biden failed to address anything in a way that made Trump look bad. So it was just all eyes on Joe, and Joe completely missed the ball. One of the
ones that was a glaring L. I was in Discord with some friends, and they were watching the debate separately from me because I was, taking notes. But I had a friend, and her and I were DMing back and forth, right? And one of the things that she actually pointed out to me, which she's not wrong, when Biden brought up Trump having kids in cages, she was like, wait a minute, wasn't he the fucking vice president when that was going on under Obama? And I was like, holy shit, she's right. She's totally not wrong. I don't know if that started with Bush or even Clinton, but it was definitely upheld with Obama. So it's wild that Biden was trying to put the separation of children from their parents and kids in cages at the border on Trump. I thought that was a huge fucking L. And he opened it right up for Trump to just be like, I had the perfect border. All he had to do was not touch it. If you want to make me the bad guy, that's fine. But he f***ed everything up, and now we have just cyclic rates of killers and rapists and murderers coming into the country. I was like, what did you do? Why did you do this? It was so bad.
Yeah, it honestly feels to me like no one even prepared Joe for responses. They said, these are your bullet points, you're going to say these things, and then you're on your own if he responds with anything other than okay. And he was just so bad, so unprepared, it felt like. Maybe it's the fact that he couldn't keep a sentence together, so maybe they had a bunch of great things prepared and nothing came to fruition out of Joe's mouth. But it just felt to me like even when Trump would tee it up, or there was things that would come in teed up, nothing got mentioned. Why was Project 2025 not brought up the entire time?
Exactly. My gosh, yes.
If I was Joe Biden, if I was the DNC, if I was the room of speechwriters that they definitely both have, I would have been hammering that point over and over and over again. You challenged him on nothing. Even in the very beginning, one of Joe's opening remarks, so to speak, was a callback to when Trump had mentioned putting bleach or injecting bleach into themselves. I'm sorry, man, but we're so past that now that was such a weak reference to make. And every reference that he tried to make about Donald Trump felt to me hollow and just insignificant.
The height and weight one was really bad too.
Yeah, height and weight, meaningless, garbage. I mean, who in their right mind? I mean, we may not have had anyone on the stage in their right mind would think that was a gotcha that would actually resonate with voting age adults that are trying to decide who should be their president. You think anyone sitting on the couch who's normal gives a flying fuck about Donald Trump misrepresenting his height and weight? You think anyone cares about your golf handicaps? You think anyone really, really wants to deep dive into the losers and suckers remark that has been a topic of debate and obfuscation?
Bro, I woke up this morning on X or Twitter, right? And he posted that shit, or his media team posted that shit, like it was some kind of W. Where it's you're a loser. It's like, dude, no, you are. Like, what?
his voice was quivering as he said it, and people are trying to tell me that that's because it was a moment of him actually showing some sort of emotion. That was supposedly, according to Biden's team and a lot of Democrats that are doing damage control today, I've been seeing sentiments that was the strong moment, and it felt like one of the weakest parts of the entire 90 minutes.
That's so insane.
It was so bad, and they're doing such a bad job that they're running with one of the weakest things that he could have possibly said in that moment.
So,
I mean, it felt like the entire thing was a distraction from what mattered.
Yep, which we'll get into later because coincidentally enough, the Supreme Court they had some things to say this morning. But going back to what you said, you mentioned Project 2025. In the event, you can always expound on this. I'm going to sum it up. In the event people in the audience don't know what that is, it's basically this super subversive project that's been cobbled together by various think tanks and like hedge fund groups. And it was in a lot of the doctrine was inspired from Viktor Orban, who is a psycho. It's all about the consolidation of power, essentially, and how to disenfranchise or break mechanisms of balance of power in government. It's super concerning, like you said, that Biden had this layup when he was talking about border, when he's talking about like national security, when he's talking about economy, at any point, because there's a through line with Project 2025 on all of these topics. At any time he opened the door, he could have talked about this at any time. And it's just disgusting to see him let that go. It wasn't even, I don't even think it was mentioned at all. And to make it a little conspiratorial, you already know what I've been saying for several episodes now. And it's like they want to lose. Democrats want to lose.
I'm fully on the bus.
Based,
I'm on
so
board
based.
And we're rolling, dude. I tried so hard for the longest time to say or to add an asterisk that they were complicit.
Yeah, you were so charitable. You were so charitable to them.
No, it's literally the goal. I'm convinced now. I am on board with what you're saying. There is no way, as I've said in previous episodes, there's no way the think tank got together and thought this was it. This was the W that they were going to score. This was the best they could do. They have to pivot from Joe. And I think that they want to. Either that, or they just want to outright lose. And to be honest, I'm not sure which one it is. But I'm leaning towards they want to lose.
I think they want to lose. And I've been thinking about some of the other conversations we've had privately about how it would actually benefit them long term to lose. Now, let Trump do whatever he wants to do with the Republicans and then come through and make sweeping changes. And then they can, not do civil war necessarily, but they can be, I don't want to say coup either because I feel like those are too charged the terms, but they can come through, get him out of office. All of the balance of power has already been removed, and then the actual people that wanted the power have the power to begin with. I've really been thinking about some of these conversations we've had.
And no better justification to extend the reach of government oversight and government control.
Yeah, we're protecting you.
Yeah, exactly. You need us in order to prevent this. And it just... I don't know. Like I said, this is purely speculation, but it's not out of the wind. We're not just grabbing this from nothing. We're really watching it in real time, and it just becomes more and more plausible to me, and that's fucking terrifying. The fact that there could be something like this afoot, or at the very least, maybe not everybody in the room has the same idea, but it seems like somebody or a group of people, a small group of people, have put this together, because there is just, I feel like I'm watching a reality TV show in which it's mostly scripted.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what I feel like I'm watching right now.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's almost becoming funny. Like, it's so sick and demented, it's funny.
Almost. Until it becomes too real for too many people. That's the only part that keeps reeling me back in, is like I almost want to indulge it for the sensationalist entertainment that it is, but then you realize what could possibly have, what could possibly happen from this. None of it's good, folks. None of it's good.
But that was just, I just wanted to, underline something that you said that I thought was super important for the audience sake. Like Project 2025, look it up. If I can get my hands on, I had a PDF of it, but I guess it's been expanded since then. If I can get my hands on the new updated version, I will post a link in the description so no one has to pay the, which group was it? Heritage Foundation? No one has to pay them $30 to read their manifesto, essentially is what it is.
Yeah, no, I think anyone in this country, especially people of voting age, should be aware of what this document says. They should absolutely arm themselves with that information, just to give you an idea of exactly what the attempt is being made on that side of the political spectrum. If you don't know about this information, it might alarm you. It should alarm you, and maybe wake you up a little bit to the depth of the issue. But I absolutely think everyone, especially everyone listening, needs to familiarize themselves with that.
Yeah, and just to be clear, this is not a shit on Republicans thing, because if Democrats were to get Trump out of office after this, if let's say the Project 2025 goes through without a hitch, then Democrats have access to all that power. This is not a shit on one side or the other. This is like a genuine, actual concern. This is like, this benefits, or it benefits a very small group of people, and it's at the detriment of the American population. Like, make no mistake.
Yeah. It's nothing but a net negative, one side or the other. So the reason I say that it's crucial to know this information is because it's just, our whole thing is be better armed with information to know what to expect and to know what to counteract. That's one of the core tenets of what we're looking down the barrel of in the next few years.
For sure. And you can bet that we'll keep the audience posted on Project 2025 as it unfolds one way or the other.
Yeah, and for folks that maybe have a hard time, if we have a hard time finding sources, I'll also link John Oliver just recently, 2 weeks ago, did a whole expose on Project 2025. So he helps get a little bit of baseline in a package that's a little bit more palatable for some people. And there was, I need to double check who it was, but there was actually a member of Congress that went and discussed it openly on the congressional floor. The problem is that didn't reach nearly enough people. I bet John Oliver has had way more views on his conversation about it than anyone in Congress. So that would be a decent starting place if you don't want to have to sit down and read a dense document right away.
I also want to, I'm going to run, I guess now I'm going to be like Trump. I'm going to run the gambit on this particular subject for a minute. What's truly troubling is I read through the initial Project 2025 before it got expanded, right? And I'm just thinking back to that particular conversation you had. You remember how you had that conversation with that one woman who talked about if she had it her way, she would love to just round up dissenters and shoot them?
Yeah.
And this is like what I think. These are the people that would support this. And they're like, they're not just complicit passively. They're actively rooting on. They would be the ones volunteering. They're the ones turning people in. They're the ones, out there in the streets, quote unquote, doing the right thing, or doing vigilantism, or whatever it is they think they're doing. It's just insane to me.
Yeah, and I think it actually highlights a point that I was kind of starting to brew up before we started recording, and that's, say what you want, say what you will about the right side of the political spectrum and what they believe, the extremism and some of the insanity that follows suit. But of the two sides, it seems like that one is doing direct action a lot better than the other. It seems like that they're actually moving forward with a lot more conviction and, sort of alignment and unanimity than Democrats are. And I understand that there's an actual tangible reason for that, but that's part of the reason why this is such a difficult and concerning election cycle, is because it feels like you have one side that is honed in on this horrific vision of a future for the United States, and then you have another one that's almost lackadaisical about what they're going to do moving forward. They seem so discombobulated, especially after last night. I've never seen the DNC more fractured than it is today, as of right now. And I just don't know if anyone really understands the severity of what other people are willing to do. I mean, I was talking to, like you said, I was talking to this woman in person, and she was saying at a plenty loud volume in a public space for so many people around us to hear, she was saying that the state of the liberals and the Democrats and what they had done to this country, she was willing to round them up, hogtie them, and then shoot them. I mean, I've never heard such a crazy thing said to me, at least in person, before.
And we live in one of the most progressive states in the union.
Absolutely.
Like, think about that.
Yeah, I was almost jaw dropped. I didn't really know what to say because I'm sort of stuck in the middle of, if I combat this point a little bit too much, am I going to be one of these people that gets fucking hogtied? Or, am I even talking to somebody that I can reason with? If you get to that point, can you be salvaged? And part of me wants to believe that they can, but another part of me is fearful that they can't.
Well, you tried though, right? I mean, you were trying to redirect some of her frustrations to the system and how it works and how it's divided people, and she just wasn't having it, right?
Yeah, it was a perfect example of some of the frustration that I've been experiencing. I mean, social media is its own monster, so trying to convince anybody of their point being too tunnel visioned on social media is kind of a moot point, but I really did give it an effort. I tried to be sort of polite and respectful of her emotional state and tried to say that this was a broader scale issue that had been, enacted by both sides of the American government, both political parties, for decades, really. Because these issues, the foundational issues that we're experiencing, what we built up to last night and today is a culmination of probably 50 years of political action, if not more. And I was trying to sort of enlighten her to the fact that the people that she thinks are her saviors are all on the same team with the people she thinks are Satanists that are killing babies and ruining the world. I mean, it's, as I've said, it's a sentiment I've expressed multiple times on the show. It really feels like an us versus them. Us is the people of the United States. Them is the ruling class, the capitalists, the hedge fund managers, the politicians, all these CEO, whatever you want to call it. And I was trying to cross that bridge. I was trying to lay down a connection between two people and make it understandable that we were actually closer to one another than she was to someone like Donald Trump,
which ironically is a conservative and libertarian perspective, right? To say these things. So you would think that she would meet you, at least at, like, maybe not cross the bridge, but she'd meet you at where the bridge connects.
Yeah, I think for some people, the teeth are too sunken in. I think that they've drank, they're at the bottom of the glass of Kool-Aid, and I'm not sure that they're coming back. And that doesn't mean that they should be, horribly mistreated or anything like that. It also made me sad, and a takeaway that I had from that, something that I've been building up towards and also expressed on the show. It's really going to be up to us, folks. We really need to do better about building our communities. We need to be better about how we talk to one another. We need to be able to have conversations with one another. We can't be scared of these conversations, because if we just avoid it like we're doing now, because it feels like we're avoiding these conversations more than we ever have, or when we have them, we're being disingenuous and we're being sensationalist, we're being combative.
Or too emotional, yeah.
Exactly. You're pushing both sides as far away from each other as possible, and it creates way too much space in the middle for shit like what's happening now.
It's just, I thought it was an important point. I know it's been a bit of a tangent, but I really wanted to underline Project 2025. It is more relevant to the debate than what was presented, and I'm glad that you brought it up.
Yeah, for sure. I was like screaming through my television. How have you not mentioned this? How are you not bringing this up? This is one of the things that you could bring into the eye of the average American, because I would be willing to bet that over half the population doesn't even know what it is. This was the best opportunity to bring it up, and they just completely left it out.
It's almost like it was by design.
Yeah, almost.
But I'm glad that you finally you joined me on the dark side. I'm Darth Vader, you're Luke, but instead of fall down the pit, you took my hand. Democrats want to lose. Now you'll finally know the power of I guess nihilism. I don't know.
Yeah. All I know, and it's funny that you had mentioned stuff like expressing almost libertarian ideals earlier, because my feelings today are, I need to go out and do what I need to do to make my immediate surroundings better, and I need to essentially not ignore what's happening at the government level, but I need to really build my foundations so that way regardless of what manifests on their end, I can feel more secure on mine.
Based. And that's stuff we will actually be getting into in later down the road, right? Because you and I have community plans we've discussed. So
yeah, absolutely. We're just right now we felt that this was probably the first and most important domino to set up, but
True.
We have a lot more tangible work to do, and we definitely plan to kind of put that out in the open going forward.
I guess moving past Project 2025, unless there was anything you wanted to add.
No, I just, again, please go familiarize yourself with it. I think it's one of the more shocking things that they've just made public information. So I just really hope people take that opportunity to go and read about it. And then I feel like everyone will be a better voter for having known what's in that document.
Before we kind of move on to the aftermath, which is where all the crazy shit starts happening, like the day after and the night after, I guess even post debate, a lot of wild stuff was happening. Was there any other takeaways you had from the debate other than Biden just objectively wasn't with it? He looked weak. He lost. Trump just got to fucking lie his ass off and did it with a smile, and nobody was fact checking him. Not Biden, not moderators, not anybody. Is there any other takeaways you had? Or was there any moments that stood out to you in the debate?
Only two, I guess, minor. One major thing and a minor thing. The first thing is moderation is completely broken along with the rest of the debate platform. I mean, if you're gonna put people up there, they need to understand the ethical responsibility that they have. And I felt like the moderation last night did such a disservice to viewership. I think that they helped create the piss poor product that we got. I think the rules were an attempt to try and make things a little bit better. You know, people had mentioned things in the past of, we don't want crowds booing and cheering for different candidates and the points that they make because we feel like it turns it into a farce and it turns it into a spectacle. Okay, well, all those things are true, but you didn't improve how moderators moderate anything either. Like, I felt like the questions that were asked were so vague, and there was no true accountability for people being off message. Was there a single question that Donald Trump was asked in which he directly responded to with an answer? Every single question that they asked, which was the next topic, he would go, real quick, I'd like to finish up what he just said, and then he would spend his entire time talking about it. Half the time, they got to the point where on the back half of the 90 minutes, they were finishing their points and their answers with over a minute left. It was like they ran out of steam, both of them.
Yeah. I do think there was a couple times where the moderators had to press Donald Trump. They were like, can you please answer the question? But I think it was dealing with, in the event you lose the election again, are you going to basically pull a J6 all over again? And he was like, I don't have a problem giving up or conceding as long as it's a fair election. But that's the shit he's been saying for years. That's the shit he led with last time.
Exactly. I felt like I got nothing new from Trump. The main takeaways that I would have, as far as picking out little bits and pieces of dialogue from him. One, I'm really tired of him simultaneously taking credit for creating the vaccines and simultaneously diminishing Biden as a president for mandating those vaccines and helping get them further out into the country. Like, he still is in this weird middle ground where he is proud of the vaccine development and Project Warp Speed, but his entire constituency and voter base thinks COVID was a sham. I mean, are we ever going to have anyone make him reconcile those two realities simultaneously? I don't understand how. Again, this was another great opportunity for moderation or for Biden to really press him on that issue. Because, again, I know a lot of people are kind of exhausted talking about the pandemic, but he's the one bringing it up. He's the one that's bringing it as a credit to his presidency, when most of the people that are his dying supporters, like unwavering supporters, think that the whole thing was a hoax. Well, was it a hoax, or was your guy amazing at ending it? I don't understand. Sorry, a little bit tangential, but it was one of those things that I keep hearing about. And I haven't listened to Donald Trump in a little while, so hearing it again just kind of maybe triggered me a little bit. It's just one of those points that's always irked at me. And secondly, it was kind of a passing mention, but did you catch Donald Trump making a connection to talking to Putin and Putin telling him about his dreams to invade the Ukraine?
I remember something vaguely off the cuff, and I remember raising an eyebrow when he was discussing Putin. But I also always raise an eyebrow when he discusses Putin since that article came out, like, what was it, last year? About where he was like, I would end the conflict, and maybe it's the beginning of this year. I'd end the conflict in 24 hours, and he basically said that he would tell Zelensky no more. So,
Yeah,
I don't know. I guess I didn't catch that exact thing, but anytime he's talking about Putin, I always feel like it's coded speech. Anytime he's talking about Xi Jinping, I feel like it's coded speech.
I mean, it's hard to pick anything out because it's everything from Donald was, at least as far as what he said, was completely on brand, even if it's all bad lies and insanity. It's nothing he hasn't said before. So, like I said, there were times where I almost tuned out what he said sometimes, and I had to double check my notes that I was taking live during it because it felt like I was just being so inundated with misinformation that it was all starting to kind of jumble together, which is how I feel most of the time he speaks. But I mean, you had one guy live for 90 minutes, and then you had another guy who couldn't speak for 90 minutes. So
what was it?
Take your pick.
What was it that he said or inferred about Putin?
So when they were talking, because he actually spent quite a bit of time talking about Ukraine and Russia, which I thought was interesting. I mean, I think in terms of being a political rival, the lever for Trump to really show a win against Biden would have been hampering on Israel-Palestine, because Israel-Palestine is where Biden's own constituency is against him the most. I think most people are pretty unanimous on Ukraine and Russia. So the fact that Trump fixated on that conflict more than Israel-Palestine by almost a 2-to-1 ratio, I thought was really interesting. But what he had said is that in conversations leading up to the invasion of Ukraine, he had an in-person conversation, I believe it was in person, maybe it was over the phone, with Vladimir Putin about the dreams that he had for the preconditions for invading Ukraine. And that it was almost like manifest destiny sort of thing. And he was saying that Biden's action or inaction, a combination of both, throughout that region is what motivated Putin to intentionally invade a foreign country and start a war. I don't understand how that works. I don't understand how Putin has a thing that he wants to do, but then Trump is telling me that it was a dream that he had and that it only came to fruition because of what Biden did. That shit doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, again, like you said, every time he talks about Putin, it's coded speech because they're clearly in a symbiotic relationship. But I just thought it was shocking that he was almost showing his hand a little bit too much, and I feel like there wasn't enough attention focused on that afterwards.
I'm curious if you can give me some clarification, because I actually may have a disagreement with you. What did you mean by you feel like the Ukraine is like mostly unanimous with like voters or people? Like, do you mean like you think most Americans support giving Ukraine like weapons and money, or like what do you mean?
I think most people, while they may not be as happy with the actual dollar amount that's going to Ukraine, especially, I guess what I was trying to say is, in contrast to Israel-Palestine, I don't see nearly as many Democratic voters and Biden supporters questioning whether or not Ukraine and Russia is a conflict that deserves to be perpetuated.
I got you.
I mean, most people think that
Sorry, go ahead.
Most people think that Ukraine is sort of a victim in this, and that Russia is still a bad guy, and that Biden isn't necessarily wrong or misguided for helping protect them. In fact, I still see daily articles about how Ukraine is a key ally in the region and how it's quintessential to continue to support them. Now, granted, I know everyone's going to harp on the dollar amount, and I'm not saying that they're wrong for that. But in contrast to Israel-Palestine, if Trump had just put pressure on Biden about Israel-Palestine, I think it would have been a slam dunk. But instead, he focused on the conflict that's more personal to him, is what I was getting through the TV.
Okay. Well, that makes sense if you're saying like compare and contrast, like people have less issue with this than that. Makes sense. Because I was going to say, I know a lot of Republicans that are super pissy about any aid going to Ukraine at all. And when you have people like Tim Pool who are actively, I don't know if he's memeing, I assume that he's memeing, but when he's making Twitter posts or X posts about saying, can we just use the money that we would send to Ukraine and just pay reparations already instead of give them money? That's wild as like Republicans universally, it seems like they don't care about what's going on over there. But Republicans also universally like have dog foreign policy. It feels like the majority of like Republican foreign policy is let's just do destabilization, which I can't blame them because it works really well, but it's also responsible for like a great many of our problems we're contending with now on the geopolitical stage.
Yeah, no, I was more framing it from a political strategy standpoint.
Gotcha,
I think if the better strategy for Trump would have been to hammer on Israel-Palestine, in my opinion. But it just felt like there was a little bit of his own personal investment leaking out there.
Okay, because I was gonna ask, like, do you think that there's really like I don't think in terms of policy, Trump and Biden are going to be way too different when it comes to Israel-Palestine. Like,
no, I think anything that Trump would allude to suggest, he keeps saying this about every foreign conflict that we had. It was just one phone call, 24 hours, one day I'll have everything fixed, which he says for everything. Again, his hyperbolic trademark, so to speak. But they're both neocons. I mean, I don't think that, and everything in this country is run by neocons and war-hawking liberals and capital interest and allies throughout the Middle East. So I really don't see either of them having a differing stance on how to approach that situation.
Thank you for bringing that up. Anyone that believes that like leftists run the country, you're out of your mind. Like you can't point to one person in a position of power that is a proper leftist. And
yeah, exactly.
There is a delineation for any listeners that don't know between a neoliberal, which is like an institutional Democrat, a progressive, which would be like a social democrat, like someone that would support like the Nordic countries or like other people that have like a free market that has like a lot of restrictions and maybe prevents a lot of exploitation, and then a leftist, which would be like a socialist or a communist. Those are like three completely different tiers and completely different ideological groups that just happen to be left of center.
Yeah, I always I can't help but like outwardly belly gut bust laugh when MAGA Republicans tell me that communists and socialists are in the White House right now.
Yeah.
Not only is that not true, but I don't think it's ever been true, and I'm not sure, given its current trajectory, that it will ever be.
It never will be true. Even with the most, if you were to get the most like I don't know, pro-worker president and like in history, they're like doing workers' rights, they're doing, I don't know, just shy of a mutual aid foundation, they're doing like basically every major industrial industry is unionized. There's still not even close to being a socialist. Those are just like social policies or social programs enacted to help promote growth, because it's ultimately keep the worker happy, keep production high. That's still capitalism. That's still neoliberalism at best, neoconservatism at worst, right?
Yeah, I mean, neoliberalism and neoconservatism are the underpinnings of United States domestic and foreign policy, and have been for decades now.
And will be for decades to come.
Exactly. There's not a single, I don't even think there's a candidate that's emerged that makes me convinced to the contrary. Even if I know they have no chance to win, even if they did, it's not going to change anything. Yeah, it's the foundation of this country.
Even someone tearing their shirt off and screaming into the sky about AOC being a socialist, like, she's not. She was like, really pro like workers' rights, but even now, like, if you look at like how she votes and you look at like some of the things that she says, and you even just look at her interviews, that bitch is dead inside. She conformed to the system. She's a liberal now. She's not a leftist. She's not a this or that. She was a progressive, but now she's just an institutional Democrat like everyone else.
They're all different shades of capitalists, folks. And they will be capitalists until they die. But there's going to be so many people in foreign countries they kill before they go.
Yeah, what was that one chick, Kristen Sinema? Back in the day, she was like a crusty, angry anarchist. And when she got into politics, she realized, oh, I don't have to be poor. I can this shit. I'm gonna make money. Corporations are awesome. That's how it
Yeah,
works.
just like the youth of like the millennial and Gen Z voters of the United States think Bernie Sanders is their socialist champion. Folks,
Okay, yeah, right.
have you looked at his net worth like recently?
Oh yeah.
Have you seen it? Maybe double check. I'm not
And
saying he's a bad guy. I'm just saying he may not be totally forthcoming.
yeah, I agree, and that's one thing I will give conservatives the high five for is pointing out that during the election when Bernie was running. So
Yeah,
I don't
and
believe
it's
that
funny, too.
socialism means poor, but definitely my man was taking a lot of corporate donations.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, it's a corporatist country. It's basically, I mean, to be maybe my own version of hyperbolic, but not quite. It's a puppet government. It really is.
So,
We're good at installing it in other places, but we're not good at identifying it within ourselves.
well, you're trained not to.
Yeah.
But that's this is like becoming a whole separate thing.
Yeah. I won't. I will stop myself before the snowball gets too large because I'm gonna start rolling downhill on that.
But I mean, I guess it kind of plays into like the rampant corporatism and how that applies to like the DNC and how they have to run their PR campaigns post debate. So
Right,
we can go right
yeah.
into that if you're done talking about the debate.
Yeah, I mean I think, ironically enough, despite how much I've talked about the debate, there's more to be said about the aftermath.
Yeah,
So I'm definitely ready.
Yeah, so originally just so the audience knows, when we were discussing doing this, we were going to actually be fact-checking. And we were going to give a summation. We were going to go down the line of like what was discussed, the questions asked, yada, yada, yada. But this actually changed today. We kind of had to change the format on the fly because so much crazy came out. Do you want to talk about the Supreme Court, or do you want to like end with that and talk about like the DNC running defense for Joe Biden with like the press junket? Did you get a chance to watch that?
I saw bits and pieces and clips. I don't think that I watched or consumed quite as much of it as you did, but I do want to touch we don't have to spend all too much time on it because I don't want it to distract too much from the debate, ironically. But I do want to touch on the Supreme Court, who made some pretty significant rulings in the wake of such a media hellstorm of controversy. And don't kid yourselves, that was intentional. I mean, they passed some major legislation today, made some major decisions when they knew that people weren't looking for it. And yeah, I just want to touch on that a little bit because, as we've said before, knowing the actual things that are being passed or the decisions that are being made is equally, if not more important than whatever you see on your television set. So,
and I'll preface it by saying that this stuff is still applicable to the debate. Like one of which is about the January 6th, so that like directly deals with Trump and like I guess you could say how Democrats are reeling from last night. They took another L with the Supreme Court.
Well, the first thing that stuck out to me, I guess we'll just go in order of what I saw, because I obviously think that the most directly pertinent piece of information or the decision that was made is in regards to the January 6th sort of fallout or indictments from there and actually having any sort of resolution from it. But the first thing that I saw was the decision about criminalizing homelessness. And that's not the vernacular that you're going to see on any headlines, but that's basically what it was. They voted that cities have the authority to do what they deem necessary to deal with homelessness. Now, I understand that homelessness is an issue, and I know that it's becoming increasingly so. In fact, even my dad last night was sending me messages from different websites showing the true depth of the homelessness issue in this country currently, and it's pretty frightening. And I don't think that there's a single person listening or otherwise that wouldn't acknowledge that even if you took the statistics out of it just optically, it's clearly gotten worse, especially over the last 4 years. But what people need to realize is the solution is not to allow cities to just round up homeless people and throw them into jails and prisons. And the fact that anyone would think that that would be a good idea is laughable to me. And the fact that the Supreme Court, it's funny, I had almost forgotten that I was reading articles leading up to this decision, but a couple weeks ago, I remember reading articles saying this is a decision that's about to be had. They're about to have an opinion on this. And then through the, 24/7 news cycle, I almost completely forgot about it just to find the headline rear its ugly head back at me today. And I'm sorry, but for me, that issue really struck a different chord. Now, I don't have any personal experience. That's not what I mean by that. I just mean on a human level, I think this is one of the abhorrent decisions amongst abhorrent decisions that this court has made. And I think it's just a perfect example of the modern American condition where we just don't want to have to see the problems that are happening. We're much happier when they're out of sight, out of mind. And this is basically the Supreme Court saying, yeah, we're good with that, and we think we should roll with it. Or at least we should let you decide whether or not you want to roll with that. I was reading somewhere the other day, in comparison to putting them into facilities for treatment and for care like a homeless shelter, the average cost per homeless person to keep in a shelter for a year is roughly $14,000 of taxpayer money, which is a big concern. Okay, well, folks, do you want to know what it is roughly to keep them in a penitentiary, in a prison? It's $42,000 a year. So, no matter what way you want to spin this problem, I'm not really sure this is the solution.
It's not, because I feel like if you're going to pass something wild and cockamamie like this, you also in tandem have to pass something like a vacancy tax. Do you know what that is, or have you heard of that?
I haven't, actually.
So vacancy tax is something that like Canada uses. As much as I despise Canada, this is like one of the more base things that they have going on. They have this policy called vacancy tax, and it basically prevents corporations from coming through, foreign or domestic, but most of the time it ends up being foreign, coming through, buying large swaths of land and hoarding it. So either they lower it ends up being one of three things. They either get subsidies from the government to fill it with like people in need. Basically it gets sublet into a government program, which is what I think would be the solution here. You get they end up paying the tax and then having to sell it, or they end up lowering the rates so that people can afford to actually have a roof over that, which would also be a solution here.
Yeah, and just another thing, I mean, I know it's a bit of a pivot, but just a statistic that I find so alarming when it comes to addressing this issue is, people obviously, like I said, they care about the optics, they want their cities and their neighborhoods to be safe, they don't want drug addicts on the corners, I get all of that. But for this to be the solution, when I can go to .org and read a stat that there are currently 28 vacant homes for every one homeless person in the United States. And this statistic was as of March 28th of last year. So who knows? It might be less, but I'd be willing to bet it's more.
Yep.
If you're going to give me that statistic and then expect me to be okay with the decision that the solution is just to throw them in prison when we already have a massive incarceration issue in this country, I don't understand. I don't understand any other take or any other opinion that can come from this. I really don't.
Well, it would probably be to not just grind out tax dollars, but also if you were to put them in private prisons. I'm sure there's if we were to look for like lobbying groups that have lobbied for anything in conjunction with this, picking up like private contracts for private prisons, I imagine that there's a whole lot of money to be made in some way, shape, or form on back-end deals.
Yeah, and also, kind of paralleling a lot of our other issues with mass incarceration. Because, like, first of all, to address what the point you just made, the state with the most homeless people thankfully doesn't allow private prisons anymore, but that doesn't mean that they're not farming this system.
Well, it doesn't mean they also won't ship them to another state.
Absolutely. And in fact, that's going to happen. It's an inevitability because they're going to be so overrun with new prisoners if they choose to enact it this way. And I have no doubts that California, at least half the cities in California, will take this as an opportunity to incarcerate people for just sleeping outside.
So it is, in fact, California that has the most homeless population?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, at least as far as the last information that I got, which I'll post links to, but it's from usafacts.org.
Okay.
But another parallel that this really highlights which shouldn't be to anybody's surprise, 37.3% of the entire homeless population are black.
Yeah.
And the ethnicity with the majority of homeless people, it's not white people, folks. You're already targeting underprivileged groups of people and underprivileged demographics, and you're punishing them for being underprivileged. I mean, that is literally what you're doing. And the actual, not funny, but interestingly enough, the highest percentage or the highest number of homeless per 10,000 people of any group of people are Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders. You have tons of homeless people in Hawaii compared to the amount of people that have properties. And so what? You're just going to start rounding those people up and clear the way for wealthy people? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous and transparent.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting.
That was a lot, and that's only one of 3 major decisions that were had this morning. So,
do you want to hit on with the abortion, and we can end on J6?
Well, so we have the freaking... because they also had, don't forget, the Chevron ruling, too.
Oh, I'm not aware. I'm actually not aware of that one.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll cover that one. So the Supreme Court today, in a tradition that is becoming steadfast for them during the Trump administration and the last, sort of 4 or 5 years, is upending long-standing decisions by the Supreme Court. So today, they decided to undo the Chevron decision, which I think I'll double check exactly when it was introduced, but I believe it was introduced in the early 70s or the late 60s. And there are some people that are frankly sort of torn about this decision, but it's a long-standing statute that allowed the government to have a lot more judicial and legal oversight over environmental issues and environmentally related issues. Well, now what they've said was that judges especially, the court especially, since they're less qualified to rule on these kinds of issues, that it really should be up to more private litigation, and it should be more up to companies and corporations to settle environmentally related debates. I'm not sure if anyone's aware, but corporations don't exactly operate with the highest standard of ethics when it comes to the environment. So to me, this felt like a tandem blow with the decision sort of upending the EPA Supreme Court decision that had been withstanding. And it sounds like that they're essentially just trying to put their hands up and turn a blind eye to anything that may happen on an even smaller scale when it comes to environmental problems, in the wake of a growing environmental crisis, mind you.
Maybe I misread something. I thought that they had passed something on abortion.
I didn't see anything about that. I saw, and I apologize, it's the federal agency power statute. The decision that they overturned is from a 1984 precedent, so my timeline's a little bit off there.
That's all right.
Yeah, but essentially it was a ruling in favor originally for the government to have more to say about environmental sort of legal disputes, and now they've said, well, I don't know that we necessarily want to be involved anymore.
Just a heads up for the audience, in the event you hear any dogs, we're a pet friendly broadcast, and sometimes it gets through, so we apologize, but thanks for bearing with us.
Yeah, sorry about that. And then the third
fine.
one,
I got dogs too, bro.
Yeah, the third one that I'm aware of in terms of significance, I didn't see anything from the Supreme Court about abortion today. I know that within the last week or two that they made that decision to protect the emergency abortions in Idaho, I believe it was. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. So,
okay.
It's a little dated.
Yeah, I was specifically thinking about this morning, so I was like, did I miss something? But yeah, no, that was because they mentioned that during the debate. It was one of the first things that they mentioned.
I must have missed it.
Yeah, no, it was it's definitely interesting. And then they also, I think the Supreme Court also made a ruling within the last, I think it was month and a half or 2 months, about the access to the abortion pill, I believe it was. So they've definitely been active. But this morning, to have 3 decisions rapid fired in the midst of a media hellstorm, I think that's let's just say interesting to say the least. And the last one being particularly curious, which is them sort of changing or altering the ability to help file obstruction charges against Trump and January 6 rioters, if you wanted to touch on that a little bit.
Well, some people are coping. Some people are saying, oh, this won't affect the majority of the cases that we've got going on. What was his name? Merrick Garland. He was the one saying, like, oh, it's only going to be like 5%. Like, it's nothing to worry about. So, but, I think it sets kind of a dangerous precedent.
Absolutely. Especially since you have people on the court that have shown way too much proximity to Donald Trump and to the January 6th movement, especially.
Well, for Christ's sake, wasn't
Yeah, it's Clarence Thomas's wife.
Yeah,
is
Clarence
literally
Thomas, exactly.
She's an insurrectionist.
Yeah, which I don't know. I feel like he should be recused from anything dealing with January 6th for that reason.
Well, I'm not going to say what I think should happen to Clarence Thomas because I don't want to get flagged for anything. But yeah, let's just say he should be recused. Him and Alito seem like they should just be recused from basically everything that happens on the Supreme Court until Trump is a faint memory. But the fact that you have justices which have been directly in a massive and growing spotlight over the last 2 years, especially for ethics concerns. Oh, by the way, that was another ruling that they made, which was the funny enough, not enough justices thought it relevant to come down on themselves for accepting bribes. That was another decision that was pretty major that I've been meaning to talk to you about that happened within the last 2 weeks, I believe. Might have even been this last week, where they had voted in favor of themselves, which is a hilarious premise, because of all of the flack that Thomas especially has been getting for receiving bribes or incentives, financial incentives and gifts, as he refers to them.
$4 million worth, right? More than any other judge ever.
By a long shot. And we're talking about receiving it from people that would have a direct incentive to influence his political decisions as a Supreme Court justice. But anyway, I could do a whole podcast on Clarence Thomas, and I'm just not going to do it.
I could too, but for different reasons.
We'd find some overlap, I think.
Yeah, for
We'd
sure.
Find some overlap.
Definitely, for sure.
But
good lord.
But yeah, no, the fact that we're still having this issue with January 6th, and the fact that there still really doesn't feel like there's been the resolution that it deserves, I think is pretty wild to me. The other issue, and it's actually a bit of a callback to during the debate, another thing that I keep hearing Donald Trump say that always kind of surprises me is he keeps putting Pelosi under fire for her refusal of the National Guard.
Yep.
Yeah, he mentioned it explicitly. In fact, spent a little bit of time on it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
But the other thing that I find
10,000 National Guardsmen, and she denied it. And a lot of people say that's false.
Yeah, one thing I find pretty shocking is that Donald Trump, without a doubt, with full conviction, said that he told his constituents, his followers, to go peacefully and patriotically. So why were you going to send 10,000 National Guardsmen to the Capitol? Well, that little detail is always kind of stuck up. That's another perked up my head moment. I just kind of clicked for me. I was like, why were you so adamant about National Guard if you thought everything was going to go the way it should have gone?
Well, see, here's the problem, right? Hear me out. You're viewing this as a self-report on his behalf, when you should really be viewing it as Democrats are pussies. And they're just...
Yeah, I guess so.
They're big scary. They're big afraid.
It's also hilarious because if he was the president at the time, isn't he within full authority to deploy National Guard of his own volition?
Correct.
So why wouldn't he have just sent them there if he felt that they were necessary?
Yeah, but that's like a conversation that a lot of people aren't.
Yeah, no, we're years past that, I guess. But
no, well, that's the thing. Is like the conversation never has been had. That's the wild thing. And going to the extent of like what you're saying about Nancy Pelosi, dude, I've literally recently, like within the last 4 days, had conversations with people our age that genuinely believes January 6th is fake. I literally had someone tell me it was fake. Like, what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they think it was like a psyop or a hoax. You know, it's incredible. I think it's the only reason that I bring it up is, well, first of all, he brought it up, and second of all, I think it's kind of something that needs to be mentioned if he's going to try to be president again, that he was an orchestrator of such a shocking and un-American event. But anyway, I'm sure people we've exhausted, or other media outlets have exhausted that topic. It was just one little thing that kind of grabbed my attention, and I just felt the need to mention it because I've never heard a dialogue about that specific point.
I
feel like I've never heard about it.
I don't know. I don't think they've exhausted it, to be honest. I feel like if you're going to hammer this talking point, we need a democracy, not a dictatorship, because that's what liberals love to drone on about. If you're going to use that, then why aren't you, again, going back to Project 2025, why aren't you buying the book or having a printout of the manifesto and saying, I'm not lying, this isn't hyperbole, this is what the they plan, read this shit, we're posting this online for the whole world to see on like whitehouse.gov or whatever but they're not doing that. Like, they don't take it seriously. And when you have your constituency for like 3 fucking years that are like, hey, can we get a different president? Like, can we get a different, like, you know, person to take Biden's place? And please God, don't make it Kamala Harris. And the DNC looks at them and they're like, oh, I hear what you're saying, but you, we're going to do it anyway. Like, what? You don't even take the threat seriously. What are we talking about?
Yeah, and why hasn't Mike Pence been on national television at every given opportunity if we're to believe that there was an attempt for his life?
I don't know.
This was a major part of the hearings for January 6th was that there was a plan to have Pence murdered. And Pence, by his own admission, backed out of what he was supposed to do on that day because he was afraid for his life and his safety. You have people chanting, "Where's Mike Pence? Hang Mike Pence." They had fucking posters with it written in nooses. And yet Mike Pence has been kind of quiet since then. I mean, he openly said that he would never support Donald Trump, which I think is kind of wild that we're not paying more attention to a VP of a former president.
That was a good point on Biden's behalf last night. He did actually point that out. Like, why is it your own VP and 40% of your cabinet not support you?
That's true. Sorry, I forgot he did mention that. It just feels like, again, the right buttons aren't being pressed. Or if they are pressed, it's a light amount of pressure. These are, in my opinion, slam dunk points to make. I mean, these are the things that should have been all on the offensive the entire 90 minutes, and I felt like I got none of it except for a little drop here and there. But anyway, we're here to talk about now, at this point of the podcast, we're here to talk about the fallout and the responses to the debate, more specifically, at least for me, from the Democratic Party.
Oh my God. If you don't mind, I want to take lead on that because I want to talk about the immediately after the press, or the immediately after the debate, the post-debate press junket. So they're in the quote spin room. It's literally called the spin room. Like, I can't make this shit up, right? And they had Jasmine Crockett, who I think to her fame, most people would probably know her recently as clapping back at Marjorie Taylor Greene because Marjorie Taylor Greene was talking about her eyelashes, and she said that Marjorie Taylor Greene was basically built like a lesbian. She was talking about like Biden's success rate, things that Biden has done, like not to get distracted because the truth's on his side. You had a Warnock, who I think is basically like the most institutionalist corporate shill. I despise Warnock. He had like all these really cliche things about elections are about the character of a nation. And it's really time that we pin down like who we want to be as a country. It's like, bro, Republicans aren't listening to this. Like, young people aren't listening to this. Like, you're so far removed from understanding like what actual people's concerns are. No one's doing this moral high ground bullshit right now, other than the DNC, right? And that's one of the reasons they're losing. And then we had Gavin Newsom, who basically was talking about what you saw tonight is the difference between light and darkness. And I don't know about you, but I had people cracking jokes about that in Discord. My DMs, I had multiple people sending me, like, if you only know the power of the dark side, memes. I don't know. The whole thing was really bad. And then to see Jill, his Biden's wife, immediately do an ad talking about basically making a soft concession that Biden lost. However, you saw his heart on display tonight. You know that he really cares. So regardless of like how it turned out, we need your money. We really want to finish what we started and give us more fucking money. And also, fuck you, give us money. It was like a South Park skit in real time. It was crazy. And then by the end of it, man, I felt punch drunk because I was just getting like inundated with the most fucking copium I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like right now I could make a supercut ASPCA commercial with Joe Biden instead of depressed dogs.
Oh my God, true.
And Sarah McLachlan or Jill Biden can come out and say, "Would you please defend this poor, harmless creature and please donate to save..."
Oh my God, you're right. That's so true. That's so real.
Yeah, it's exactly how I felt. Like, I'm sorry, but regardless of what you want to do with moral grandstanding, people care if their president can't even speak for himself. I'm not trying to bash Jill. She's doing a lot of legwork. Okay, she's got a lot to work against. But the fact that, like you said, the minute that it ends, she has to run, grab him by the arm, and run out on a stage and immediately take a microphone and basically keep him quiet while she does damage control. You've lost me, man. You've lost it. It's such a bad look, and I don't care what people say. Optics are a vast majority of what matters during an election cycle.
100%.
This is optically a fucking nightmare, and this guy out there, like I said, propped up like a scarecrow. Then Jill takes him off the fence post for the night, and he just kind of gets to sit around and do that goofy dementia smile that he does when he doesn't really know what's going on, but he wants to seem happy. And now she's out there doing all the election work. She's doing the campaigning. It's not good. There's no way that you can salvage that interaction and those moments. And it was refreshing, which I'm sure is not the word most people would like me to use. It was refreshing to see more media outlets have that moment of realization that a lot of us have had for years now. And that's that this shit ain't it. This is not good. Whether we talk, I'm not saying that we're going to agree on the specifics of what should happen as a result of last night, but I'm a little bit glad that it happened, because now there's no hiding it. There's people doing copium. There's people doing damage control, some of which I think are doing it to bolster their own positions and their own careers, like Newsom.
Sure.
But thank fucking God that we actually get to see the severity of the issue. And I know people will hate me for that, because they're going to say anything that's a justification for people to vote for Donald Trump is a net negative for people all across the globe, and in the US especially. I don't disagree with you.
No, I disagree. I'd say f*** those people, because if you have MSNBC saying, if Biden was the CEO, would we really want him running the company? That's MSNBC. That's like super fucking liberal. If they're saying it, it's not unreasonable that like a normal person who maybe is a moderate or like someone that's an undecided voter wouldn't fucking just, I don't know, observe what happened last night.
Right. I'm just saying, I guess I would say, seeing that last night as an undecided voter, your response shouldn't be, I'm voting for the other guy that lied for 90 fucking minutes and is a complete sociopath. I'm just saying maybe this Democratic nominee isn't the right one, and more people need to be voicing their opinions. The New York Times is screaming for Joe Biden to
I was just going to bring that up. Yeah, the editorial board wrote an op-ed, and it wasn't just that. There was another group, I can't remember. I can find it, but the editorial board and another group, both of which are donors, they wrote an op-ed. And I don't care what anyone says. Other donors read those. You might say, oh, it's a personal opinion, or it's like this one group's opinion, but like donors all communicate. Donors and super PAC like leaders or companies all communicate extensively. They have entire media teams dedicated to just correspondence when it comes to things like this. He's fucking cooked. If you have your own team and your own like publications saying, hey, but guys, maybe it's time we like, throw in the towel. You're fucking cooked. It was the first debate. We haven't even seen the second one yet.
Once the money bows out, you've lost. If the money starts to go away, that means that there's no meaningful faith in you anymore. You can try to do damage control as much as you want, but it'd be really interesting to see if we could get insight into like a transference of money into other candidates now, because I almost guarantee you that there's going to be a freaking vacuum in the DNC now. I mean, I don't see any way that they claw him back into relevancy with this.
Well, here's what we can actually research this before the next episode, and we'll see if we can find any mega donors that start funding Republicans for their ad campaigns, and then you'll know it's fucking game over. Because if they start funding the others, reinvesting and hedging their bets, they're going to be invested in a different Democratic candidate next time around. You
know who also had a great night? RFK Jr.
I didn't get a chance to watch his debate yet.
Oh no, he could have said nothing and had a great night, because these two freaking psychopaths and degenerates don't seem to know what's going on at any given moment. So even if he had just kept silent for the entire debate, I think his position would have improved. Because again, and maybe I'm projecting, maybe I'm coping a little bit myself, I don't see any rational human being that watched that debate and thought either of these guys is the guy. I mean, please, I'm not even. I'm an atheist and I'm praying for something. I mean, this is ridiculous, man.
It's so. I want to agree with you, but I made the mistake. I was watching C-SPAN last night. Okay, that's how I watched the debate. I'm watching fucking C-SPAN, and in between correspondence, they had a call-in. I tried calling in multiple times to tell people vote third party, right? They had like panicked third party voters. They had people that were like, if you vote third party, you hate America because you're giving the fucking election to Trump. Oh my God. You had Democrat supporters, you had Republican supporters. Most of the people that were undecided or even third party, I have to pick a choice. Like, I feel like I have to pick one of these two. So
I mean, that's how brain broken it is, right? That's how sort of doom and gloom it feels. It no matter what you just witnessed, against your better judgment, the vast majority of people are going to go into a booth this year knowing that they don't like either choice that they make, and just saying, I have no option but these two. And it's frankly, it's pathetic, and it sucks, because this is the year especially where I really, really want to prop up third party representation, and that's still true. It's just a real shame that the guy that is propping up third party representation the most is RFK Jr.
Yeah, but at some point, I feel like something has to give. Like, real talk, when it comes to solutions, this is going to be one of those difficult choices that a voter has to make. Are you going to allow them to intimidate you with fear into voting for Joe Biden? Are you going to basically be that person that goes, actually, I don't care what anyone says, regardless of facts or concerns about consolidation of power and giving one person too much access to the leverage of control, I'm going to vote Trump? Or are you going to say, hey, I'm going to knowingly vote third party, knowing that it could potentially go to Trump, but I'm breaking the fucking cycle by allowing one of these two terrible fucking candidates to have power. This time, I'm leveraging my vote. And when people fucking call me, because they will call you and ask you, my guy, why did you vote, or my gal, why did you vote third party when we had such an important election? You can tell them why. They use that poll data, and that poll data goes to the DNC and the RNC, and then they construct policy around how to try and convince third-party voters or moderate voters in America. That is your power. And like we covered this, I think, in the second episode. For people that say that voting third party or even voting undecided has no power, you're fucking wrong. The primary showed by them sending a message unanimously to Biden. Biden softened his stance on Palestine and Israel. So it does work. It's just a matter of we have to find a way to implement it without completely cutting our nose off to spite our face.
Yeah, and I think that's the inherent issue, right? Is we have so much infighting going on with, especially amongst the left. This is kind of what I was alluding to earlier, is you have so many people on the left that, I mean, you can go over any social media platform right now, and if you go into Democratic voting circles or blue voting circles, it's nothing but you are pro-fascist if you don't put Biden's name down. And then that's the prevailing sentiment, and it's frankly not even close. But I'm curious. I'm going to watch it over the next week, because I think it's going to soften. I'm still seeing the, like I saw posts on Reddit today from political subreddits saying, I don't care if the man has a stutter, I'm never voting for fascism, like unironically using these talking points. And I knew I was going to see it, but I think you're going to see them less and less going forward. I think the DNC, if they want to prove us wrong and they want to actually win something, then they need to legitimately come up with a contingency plan, and fast. Because I don't see a way that Biden wins this election after last night, if nothing else happens.
I'll hold my judgment. I still obviously think Democrats want to lose. I've been saying it for damn near however long you've known me, I've been saying it. But Biden had a speech. I think it was today. First thing today, he said he aims to do better next time, essentially. But it's like, well, I mean, you can't afford. If you fuck up next time, it is 100%. It's a fucking wrap.
I think it's a wrap, man.
It might be. You might be right. It might be a wrap. I mean, it is what it is. But if you have
Democratic and
sorry,
go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, last night in C-SPAN, there were fucking Biden callers, pro-Biden callers, who were saying that they're switching to Trump, and there was, there were people that were basically third-party voters that were going, oh well, I'm scared, I am gonna vote for Biden. But it's like if you have like moderate voters who were leaning Biden until they watched the debate, like what the.
Yeah, I mean, dude, an incumbent Democratic president lost MSNBC and the New York Times. I mean, that alone, that sentence alone, just blows my mind. Never in my lifetime did I think I was going to watch something go so poorly as watching Biden in that debate last night. It might have been one of the worst political things I've seen in my entire life. Honestly, I think I understand that people are afraid of Donald Trump, and I'm not saying that they're wrong for that belief, but please don't do the country a disservice and be disingenuous about what we saw. Yeah, and I think at this point, if the Democrats actually brought forth any proposal of a swap or brought forth any sort of new nominee or candidate, I think that they would win the election hands down, because I think it would be the move to show the American people that they have a conscience and that they have some form of awareness and they actually care enough to make changes, however dramatic and unprecedented, to do what's right for the American voters. I think that anybody would win in a landslide against Donald Trump except for Joe Biden. So you just can watch. They do nothing. They change nothing. Our conspiracy remains as strong or stronger than it's ever been.
True.
And then that this was a concerted effort.
True. I was going to say that Barack Obama, these are rumors, right? So completely unsubstantiated. Take it as like headcanon or like fan fiction for now until we get these substantiated. But there was a bunch of rumors and like coming from political pundits online about apparently Barack Obama had like an emergency meeting with Biden and was trying to talk him into potentially stepping down and finding a replacement candidate. Apparently Jill Biden was not having that. And then you had Kamala Harris, who was ass mad because her name allegedly wasn't even in the running for taking his place. But that's also because she's got the fucking personality of Tim Scott. And we all know Tim Scott is a cardboard cutout. So it's just wild. It's not even just that it was a catastrophe for the Democratic Party. It's not even just the fact that you open fucking X or Twitter or other social media and you see the DNC posting shit like, we all know who the real winner was, and it's a picture of Biden. It's not even the fact that Trump is dropping attack ads that are 95 seconds long of all of Biden stumbling and just not being able to make cohesive sentences. All of these things aside, you have rumors running rampant about other DNC, like former president and like people in of affluence in that party rushing to Biden's side and saying, hey, maybe it's time to give this shit up. Like, that's not good by any metric. That's kind of like the death throes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I don't think there's a coming back from this. I think people can say, and I know that you said that you'll give them the grace of the second go around. I think it's dead. I think they're dead in the water. I think Joe's candidacy and potentiality to be the next president of the United States is DOA, dead on arrival.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily saying you're wrong, but like, because we're gonna ride this content train to its off the cliff. I won't even say destination. We're gonna ride this off the cliff. I feel like if we were to get sassy bitch Biden from the State of the Union, and he were to just ass fuck Trump in the debates, I think that it would be a different conversation.
Yeah, I mean, he could bring some people back. Actually, the funniest thing that I heard throughout all the media swarm just happened to be like a little sentiment snippet from Jon Stewart, where he was talking about how, everyone was convinced that Biden was going to get his shot of adrenochrome or his stimulants before he came out on stage so he would look good. Well, I wish they had, and I wish they would.
Yeah.
If it meant that I was going to get a lucid president of the United States, I don't care what you fucking pump him with, as long as it doesn't pop his heart. I mean, folks, he had a real Mitch McConnell moment. He had the same exact moment that Mitch McConnell had. And we spent weeks, there's people still to this day that want to make sure that that moment for Mitch McConnell doesn't get forgotten, where he just completely goes blank on camera.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's what your president did. That's what your candidate did. And he's supposed to lead the most influential nation on the planet for another 4 years. I'm sorry, but I'm not convinced that can be forgiven. Well, even if it's just one moment.
Don't forget, I feel like this actually, believe it, now that I look back on it, was kind of foreshadowed. Do you remember how that video came out where Biden was like wandering off and people were debating? It was like hotly contested one way or the other. Like, oh, he was talking to the paratroopers. Oh, actually, no, he wasn't, because if you look at the undoctored video, there was no one there. I don't know. I never actually saw the finished product, but I feel like if it's true that there was no one there, they should have canceled the fucking debate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which would go to the fact that this is the DNC's fault. All of this is the DNC's fault. And I feel like if you're right and it's a DOA movement at this point, or a DOA campaign, they're going to blame everyone but themselves.
Well, of course, because the one thing the DNC hates more than anything is populism, even though it's quintessential to getting elected. I'm starting to really feel like the DNC just does not like the average American citizen. And I guess I've felt that way for a while, but this whole election process, during all of the 2020 election and the Biden administration, even like down to the rhetoric of Kamala Harris today on Anderson Cooper, she's like annoyed that Anderson Cooper expresses a concern for Biden's fit ability to run the country. Like, these people care about preserving their influence and their money most of all, and everything else be damned, because I think that they are literally throwing an election away, and I think they're doing it on purpose.
Super based.
Yeah, the only way to change that perception and to usurp that perception is to actually change your candidate. And to be honest, I want to be proven wrong, but I don't think they're going to do it. I think that this is right in line with what their roadmap was. But I swear to God, literally anybody at this point, you could put Hillary back in, and I think she'd beat Donald Trump.
I agree with you. If they were to do Newsom, they've been like stoking the fires, kind of like they did with Barack. They introduced him like well ahead of time as like a standout senator. Like, they've done this shit with Newsom for like over a year now, probably closer to 2. Where they're like, oh, he's managed the 9th largest or 5th largest economy in the world. Like, he took over for Schwarzenegger, and he's done such a fucking good job. And he's like a businessman, so like he owns his own vineyards. He's a capitalist, and he's also young, and he's charismatic, and he has ties to the right, actually, because he was married to Kimberly Guilfoyle, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like they could spin it any number of ways, and I despise Gavin Newsom for a lot of reasons, but he's really, really good at debates. He's really good at spinning information and making it work for him.
He is the epitome of a career politician.
That's true.
I mean, despite the fact that he's everything that, Trump kind of ran against, I think, like I said, he would be the ideal choice, but literally anyone in place of Biden would be enough of a performative measure that they would vote for whomever it was in a landslide.
Except Harris. I think if they put Kamala Harris, she would fucking lose.
And that's why her name's nowhere near the fucking idea.
Yeah, that's true.
They're like, nope, that's the one thing we know we can't do. We could dig Obama back up, and that would still have a better chance than Kamala
that's
Harris.
Probably why they're not doing the 25th Amendment, right? Like, you asked me, like, hey, are we doing the 25th Amendment? Is it time? But I think that's probably why they're not doing it, because then she would be the one.
Yep, and I think it's pretty clear that nobody wants that.
True.
And frankly, nobody should. I'm going to be honest with you. But, if nothing changes, if the platform doesn't radically shift or pivot, we are heading towards Donald Trump being the next president. I'm convinced after last night. Painful as that is to say.
Just putting it out there, there was a poll that came out last night, end of last night. It was, I think, 2 or 3 hours after the debate from C-SPAN, and it showed that only 17% of the watchers thought that Biden won or did a good job. 49% of them thought that he resoundingly lost. Like, if you had, that's across the whole spectrum of political ideologies. So
yeah, and I think the people that didn't vote or were undecided, I think those people are trying to find a copium response, and that's why they haven't responded yet. Because you can, and because like the only from the 17%, because I've seen sentiments from people who also think that he won in a landslide.
You're insane.
They just keep saying, yeah, you're insane, and they said that their reasoning for it was that he stood on a moral high ground essentially, and he presented facts.
That's true. That's true. But he also, when it would present, when given the golden opportunities to refute the lies, which is more important than just presenting raw statistical data, right? It's being able to rhetorically refute bullshit. He didn't do it or couldn't do it. That's why he lost.
Exactly. Couldn't is the word I would use. He literally had no substance against the overtly false claims made by his political rival. And I'm sorry, but as the incumbent, that's your main responsibility. They've been writing on this campaign of we're just going to tell everyone what we've done and that's going to be enough. Well, clearly it isn't. Clearly it isn't. Your approval ratings are in the f***ing toilet, dude. You have to do something. You have to actually try and reach an audience. And it seems like you either can't or you outwardly refuse to. So there's a reckoning coming for the DNC, and I'll be interested to see if they actually respond to it.
Yeah, I know conservatives are making this joke right now. I feel like I made it first, so I'm taking credit for it, even though I'm sure that it's like a really widespread opinion. Yesterday was elder abuse. Allowing this shit to happen, insane. Again, this is also, I think, this opens up a different conversation for maybe a different time on the podcast about how old is too old to have these people representing us, and that goes for both of them.
My answer to that, because I've been having to think about it a lot more recently, but my answer to that, it's like the number keeps lowering every time I hear either one of these people speak.
Yeah. Well, you already know what I said about leadership and how old I think people, like, we should stop listening to people at a certain age.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's I'm not saying that people are bad when they get old. I'm saying that there's just a certain level of cognitive fitness that has to be present in somebody that has that much power and responsibility. And the fact that that could be even remotely construed as controversial just kills me.
Well, before we close out, I did want to ask, like, you saw the guy that gave Biden the cognitive test. He said that he was worried about his cognitive ability and that he got basically fucking dragged in a court hearing. You saw that, right? With Congress?
Yeah.
They basically implied he, like, embellished and he had, like, a political agenda, right? But all they did is prove him right last night.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it feels like there's a coalescence of intentional things that are coming together and making it out to be the worst case scenario for Joe Biden and his candidacy. And, you know, Trump mentioned the cognitive test. Of course, he said, I think at some point, almost literally, that he had the best cognitive health of anyone that was ever tested for this.
Yeah, any president ever. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, man. Like, you can't even stay on topic for more than 30 seconds. I actually, like you were saying, we all kind of assumed that the debate structure and the rules would favor Biden, but they overwhelmingly seem to have favored Trump. That's true. At least last night.
Well, they're both 80 years old, right? So they both are cognitively slipping. But like this narrative that I see pushed by like Dave Pakman or other like left-leaning political commentators that Trump is actually the one with dementia is insane, especially after last night. I wonder if they'll just drop that narrative at all or entirely.
Yeah, I think you'll start to see it go dark. I mean, you're gonna have your people that are gonna do it no matter what, but it's just insane to me that you would refuse to admit the reality that's so clear and obvious in front of us, and the fact that you don't, like, some people don't understand how harmful that is.
It's just bipartisan hackery.
Yeah, but to a point now that is overtly dangerous. You know, it used to be the status quo, but it felt like in like a lighter way because we didn't let politicians slip so far from, you know, relevancy. But now they're so far off the mark that the two choices that we have are inherently awful, and we can't even all admit that they're both inherently awful.
Closing thoughts, like, where do you think we go from here? What do you think?
Nikki Haley 2024.
Oh, get the fuck
I'm just
out
kidding.
Of here. Podcast canceled.
Follow the money, right?
Follow the money, it's true, yeah.
Nikki Haley versus RFK for president.
I'm leaving the country.
No, 100%. Yeah, I'm already getting prepared with my documents. No, closing thoughts. I mentioned it earlier. It's something that I tend to mention at the beginning and end of a lot of podcasts, but as much as I am taking the time out of this to really lay into both candidates and expose what I believe are the seedy underbelly of American politics. I really do want to stress that this, now more than maybe ever, is a time for people to really do a lot of direct action at an individual level. Because I don't have a great outlook for whomever's going to win this election. I know that there's varying degrees to what could go wrong within the next 4 years, depending on which of the two wins. But it doesn't sound like it's going to be good for anybody regardless. So maybe this is, as you kind of mentioned earlier, the necessary pain before the transformation. That's really what I feel like. And I know that to some people may sound, a little bit exaggerated because we just had the first debate, but it really should communicate to everyone just how difficult this situation is. And I just want to stress to everybody that we really need to move forward in a more positive direction. And I don't think that we're getting that from our governance, so we need to manifest it for ourselves.
Oh, I 1,000,000% agree with that sentiment. And there's lots of ways that people can manifest it for themselves, to kind of piggyback on what you're saying. I'm a huge proponent of third-party voting. It doesn't have to be like RFK. It doesn't have to be like Marianne Wilson or whoever. Find a candidate that's policy is meaningful. And I would say, regardless of who wins, whether it's going to be Trump or Biden, this is going to be all the more important to pay attention to who you're voting for your senators in the next couple of years, who you're voting for like what policies they're passing, because these people either make or break. They will either support the president or they will act as like a barrier to try and prevent some of this bullshit that like one of these people tries to pass. Pay attention to like what's going on in your cities, like city council meetings. A lot of people they'll make time to watch some dumbass reality TV show. They'll hate it. They won't even enjoy it. So take an hour of your time, sometimes it's 2 hours, get a notebook, a shitty, cheap notebook, take a pen, and just write down some of the things that people are talking about changing for your own city, your own city council. Pay attention to what the mayor's doing. There are so many meaningful things that you can do with immediacy. And just, I would say, downvote. Look into down ballot voting. Look into who your upcoming senators are, or who's even running for governor. All of these things matter. It's not just the president is the one make or break. It's just the most popular thing. It's the most the thing with the most media credibility, I guess it would be how I would put it. There's even if the worst case scenario happens, there's still other ways that we can kind of mitigate the damage. So stay active, do right by people in your community. One of the ways to do that is like by taking a political action.
Yeah, of course. And again, don't shy away from the conversation, because if we don't collaborate in any way, shape, or form, that's the only way to ensure our own destruction. So, but the thing that's been the most obvious to me over the last 4 years is that the federal government is turning its back on people a little bit, maybe a lot of it.
A lot of it.
So your state representation is more important than ever. Your state attorney general is the most important position, more important than it's ever been. Your governors, your mayors, etc. Please, please, please look after your locality, because if the federal government goes the way that it seems, like if it continues down its trajectory and everything is basically on a state-to-state basis, you're going to want to make sure that your state is reinforced in the way that you want to see fit. So get more involved with it, because if you don't, then you're gonna realize until it's too late that your state election and your state representation and your city representation actually in a lot of cases has more of an impact on you than federal anyway. I mean, just look at what's happening in New York. I think if you asked a lot of New Yorkers who are more politically involved, they're more focused on their fucking mayor and their governor right now.
Chicago too.
Yeah, it's more and more important every single year, and the closer we get to this election, the more I'm going to keep repeating that point. So please look out for each other, because at the end of the day, the only thing that you have a direct impact on is what you do with your own action and what you do in your own community. So really make sure that you don't squander those opportunities to make positive change.
True. And please don't be so disillusioned that you don't vote. I can't urge, I always feel like I know that should go without saying, but there's always that one person that's like, this is why I don't vote, brother. It's like, stop.
Yeah. Yeah, when I say do direct action, I don't mean action by inaction. So
True.
doing nothing serves literally no purpose and only distances you from any sort of potentiality for positive change. So please don't be that person.
Based. All right. I mean, we covered a lot. I think I need a shot of whiskey.
Yeah, or 2 or 3 for me. I apologize a little bit for some of the sporadic nature of the conversation. We both came in with a lot of energy, and we're, kind of shaking off some cobwebs in this process. So it's only going to get better from here, and I look forward to tracking it on a week-to-week basis, going back to our hopefully weekly thing, and hope that we get to see more and more of you kind of go through this election journey with us, and from that point on.
That's true, because we got big plans for the rest of the year for coverage, and
Absolutely.
You can find us if you want to listen to us or share us. If you like us or don't like us, still share it. Be like, listen to these morons, and I can't believe they have these takes. Share it with your friends. You can find us here on YouTube. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and what was it, Pocket Cast?
Yep, Pocket Cast.
Yeah. So
great platform for anyone who likes podcasts. It is something that, to get the best experience out of it, it is a paid service, but it is absolutely worth it for minimal cost. Yeah, definitely recommend it.
We're not sponsored. We're not sponsored.
No, we're not. It's not an incentive.
But we want to be.
I use it personally. That's why I say that it's good. I'm not sponsored in any way, shape, or form. So
not yet.
Don't mistake it as a plug. It's just something that I believe in.
So, all right. Well, with that said, everybody take care, stay safe, and we will catch you next time.